An elderly woman at Costco warned me the person behind me had been following me, and my sister, Anne, went pale after my ex-boyfriend's call about seeing my dead mother. I drove to the supermarket shaking. My mother's eyes locked on mine in the dairy aisle, whispering, "Not here." I didn't understand what the elderly woman meant at first. Her hand barely grazed my cart, the tremor in her fingers so subtle I almost missed it. We were standing near the front of the Costco in Henderson, Nevada, the hum of the fluorescent lights sinking into my skull, when she leaned in and whispered, "The person behind you has been following you through every aisle." Her voice was soft, almost apologetic, like she wished she didn't have to say it. But the look in her eyes, wide, alert, pleading, latched onto something raw inside me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My body went rigid, my hands clamped around the cart handle until my fingers tingled. I'd been trying to breathe normally ever since my sister Anne dropped the truth on me 2 hours earlier, truth I still couldn't absorb. She had said it quietly, standing in her driveway in Summerlin, her makeup still on from the photographer's last shots at the wedding. I had gone to help clean up, numb and exhausted, trying to get through the day without thinking about why certain people weren't there. My ex-boyfriend Noah's number lit up my phone for the first time in 3 years, and I almost let it ring out. But curiosity grabbed me. "I saw your mom at the wedding," he had said. Calm, certain, like he was telling me the weather. Something in me cracked open. I told him he must have mistaken someone else, that my mother died when I was 12, that we had a funeral, that he knew this. His silence stretched long enough to curdle in my stomach. When I told Anne what he'd said, she didn't laugh. She didn't call him delusional. She just went pale, the kind of pale that comes from a wound reopening, not fear beginning. She whispered, "She didn't die, Dad made it up." Everything after that blurred into static. I don't remember getting into my car. I don't remember leaving her driveway. I only remember driving west on St. Rose Parkway, with the air conditioning blasting even though it was already cold out. My heart hammered the whole way, as if trying to outrun the idea that the last 20 years of my life might be a lie. And now here I was, inside Costco, frozen in place, an elderly stranger warning me that someone was trailing me. I tried to swallow, but it felt like my throat was collapsing. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she misunderstood. Maybe I was projecting panic onto everything around me because the world had already tilted off its axis today. Still, I finally forced myself to push the cart toward the refrigerated section. The doors hissed open, and a wave of cold hit me so sharply it made my eyes sting. I kept my gaze forward, afraid that turning around would reveal something I wasn't ready to see. But when I rounded the corner into the dairy aisle, everything inside me stopped. A woman stood in front of the yogurt shelves, her hand hovering over a carton she didn't seem to notice. Her profile was angled just enough that I saw her eyes first, eyes I had seen in my own reflection for decades. Eyes that shouldn't exist anymore. My breath snagged in my chest. My legs turned to water. She looked older than my memories, of course, gray threaded through dark hair, lines carved at the corners of her mouth. But it was her, the impossible. The dead, my mother. She turned slightly as if she sensed me, and her expression shifted, not shock, not recognition, something colder. I took one step forward and she finally looked right at me, her lips parted. And I knew she'd been expecting me. Every memory I have of my mother is wrapped in the kind of softness that feels suspicious now, like someone edited the reel of my childhood and clipped out the parts that mattered. Until today, the last time I saw her was a Tuesday morning in 2006. She stood in the doorway of our house in Henderson, one hand on the frame, the other tucked around her coffee mug, telling me to grab a jacket for school because a storm was coming. I remember her hair was still damp from her shower, and she smelled like the citrus shampoo she always bought from CVS. That was it. Ordinary. Perfectly forgettable in the way moments feel forgettable before you know they're the last. 2 hours later, my father showed up at the school office white-faced, tight-jawed, and ushered me into his truck. He didn't speak until we were halfway home. When he finally said the words, "car accident," instant, nothing anyone could do, I stared at the side of his face, waiting for something human to leak through. A tear, a crack, a tremble, nothing came. We didn't view the body. He said it was better that way. There was a closed casket funeral at the church off Warm Springs Road, filled with people I barely knew. I cried because I was 12 and confused, and because everyone expected me to. Anne was 15 and cried harder than me, her whole body shaking through the service. My father kept one hand on her shoulder the entire time, like she might bolt if he let go. There were moments, looking back, that I should have questioned. Things that felt too clean, too rehearsed. The way he sold Mom's car the same week. The speed with which her clothes disappeared from the house. The way, whenever I tried to talk about her months later, he'd shut me down with a clipped, "We need to move forward." But I was a child. I believed what I was told. The real fracture between Anne and me happened years later, when she left for college in Flagstaff and barely came home after that. She grew distant in a way I chalked up to grief manifesting differently for each of us. But there were odd hints. Whenever I'd ask if she remembered Mom singing in the kitchen or dancing with us in the living room, Anne would hesitate, like the memory hurt differently for her, like it carried a second layer I couldn't see. Still, nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what she said today. When Noah called out of nowhere, it ripped open a wound I didn't know was still living inside me. He said he saw my mother at the wedding venue, standing near the bartender, looking right at him before turning away. I wanted to scream at him for playing with me, but his voice wasn't mocking or cruel. It was cert. Too certain. And Anne's face, God, I keep coming back to that moment. She didn't flinch, didn't question the possibility. She just whispered, "Dad made it up." I asked her how she could say something like that. She backed away from me, eyes glistening, saying she didn't know everything but knew enough. That our father wasn't who I thought he was. That she'd kept quiet because she thought she was protecting me. But from what? As a kid, I thought grief hardened my father. As a teenager, I thought losing Mom broke something in him. As an adult, I assumed we were all just damaged in our own ways. Now, staring at this woman in the dairy aisle, alive, older, watching me with a grimness that didn't resemble love, I understand something else. Someone lied to me so deeply, so thoroughly, that the truth feels like a foreign language. And my mother's eyes, the ones staring into mine, tell me I'm only beginning to learn it. She didn't speak first. My mother, this woman who'd been dead for 20 years, just held my stare long enough that the cold air from the dairy cases felt like it was crawling under my skin. My throat tightened, but I forced my feet to move. One step, another. I kept expecting the world to snap back into place, for someone to laugh, for her to vanish, for anything to make this less real. She finally turned away before I reached her, pushing her cart down the aisle like I was a stranger. And something in me, something stunned and childlike, hardened in an instant. If she wasn't going to acknowledge me, I wasn't going to chase her like some abandoned kid begging for scraps. Not again. I followed anyway, but not out of longing, out of something sharper. A need for answers that had burned holes in me all afternoon. She moved quickly for someone her age, weaving through shoppers, never looking back. She headed toward the frozen section, and every instinct told me she was trying to lose me. No, not this time. I cut through the produce shortcut and caught up near the end caps. When she saw me step into her path, her face barely shifted. No surprise, no guilt, just a slow, tired exhale that made my stomach twist. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured, her voice. Older, rasped at the edges, but unmistakable. The sound of bedtime stories, of lullabies, of a life she chose to disappear from. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My brain was jammed between rage and grief, clogged by 2 decades of believing she was dead. She didn't rescue me from the silence. She just said, quieter, "This isn't the place." Then she moved past me, not around me, through me, her shoulder grazing mine like I was an obstacle, not a daughter. I felt something collapse inside, something that had survived all the years without her. I didn't follow her this time. I watched her walk away until the crowd swallowed her. The moment she vanished, everything in me snapped. The grief, the confusion, the instinct to shut down, I shoved it aside. I grabbed my phone and called Anne. She picked up immediately, her voice still frayed from earlier. "Where are you?" "I found her," I said. My own voice sounded far away. "At Costco, she saw me, she talked to me, and then she walked away." Anne didn't react with disbelief. She didn't ask if I was sure. She just whispered, "Did she look okay?" That question sent a pulse of anger through me so fierce it steadied my breathing. "You knew," I said. "You've always known something. And you never told me." Before she could answer, I hung up. I drove home with a kind of clarity that bordered on numb. I wasn't the same person who'd stumbled into that store in shock. Something inside had reassembled itself. Rougher, sharper, unwilling to be lied to anymore. By the time I reached my townhouse near Seven Hills, the setting sun was bleeding orange light across the street, and I realized the elderly woman's warning from earlier kept echoing in my head. The person behind you has been following you through every aisle. I had been too consumed to look then, but standing at my front door, key in hand, a chill crawled up my neck. Because the feeling hadn't left. The sense of being watched rode home with me, clung to my skin, followed me up the walkway. I unlocked the door and paused before stepping in, listening to the quiet house breathe around me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone, but not in a comforting way. More like someone else was already inside the story I hadn't even begun to understand. And I knew the next step wouldn't be about grief. It would be about uncovering why my mother had stayed alive, who kept that truth buried, and what they were willing to do to keep it buried still. I didn't turn on any lights when I stepped inside. The house felt too still, too alert, like it had been holding its breath waiting for me. I set my keys on the counter and stood there, listening. The refrigerator hummed. A car passed outside. Nothing else, but the wrong kind of nothing. The kind that vibrates. I walked through each room slowly, checking corners I'd never checked before. Closet, pantry, guest bathroom, everything was in place, except for one detail so small I almost missed it. My office chair was angled slightly toward the window. I never leave it that way. A heat crawled up my arms, but I forced myself to scan the rest of the room. No drawers open. No files disturbed. But the subtle shift of that chair wasn't random, it was intentional. Observational. Like someone wanted a vantage point facing the street. I backed out and closed the door. I should have left the house. I should have called someone. But my mind kept circling the same question. Why would my mother avoid me at the store? Why now? And who would follow me? The last one hit hardest. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app for my doorbell camera. My stomach tangled when I saw a missed motion alert from about 30 minutes before I arrived home. I tapped the video. A man stood at the edge of my walkway, half turned away from the camera, hood up, hands in his pockets. He stayed there for 15 seconds, not moving, not knocking, before walking out of frame. His build hit me first, tall, lean, familiar in a way that made bile rise in my throat. Noah, my ex, the same man who'd called out of nowhere claiming he saw my dead mother at my sister's wedding. I replayed the footage. Once. Twice. The angle hid his face, but everything else was too close to ignore. The stance. The walk. The hesitation, like he wasn't sure whether to approach or retreat. And the question punched through me, had he been the one following me in Costco? Before I could spiral further, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally I would have ignored it, but adrenaline was already flooding through me. I answered. Hello, a breath, then a woman's voice, flat and steady. You need to stop looking for me. My blood iced. Mom, silence, not confusion, not denial, just an exhale that sounded almost resigned. I shouldn't have run into you today, she said. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I pressed a hand to the counter to stay upright. You faked your death, you left us, you owe me an explanation. No, she said. I owe you distance, it keeps you safe. My pulse hammered. Safe from what? She didn't answer. Instead she said, he was at your house today, don't let him in. My heart nearly stopped. Who, Noah? Another silence, this one heavier, loaded with something she refused to say. You were never supposed to be dragged into this, she murmured. I tried to keep you out. What does that mean? My voice cracked. Why did Dad lie? Why did you disappear? Why are you hiding from your own daughters? A beat. Then her voice dropped into something stripped bare. Your father was right about one thing. You can't trust the people you think you know. The line went dead. I stared at my phone until my vision blurred. She hadn't just dodged my questions. She delivered a warning that rewrote everything. My father wasn't the only liar. My mother wasn't the only one running. And if she knew someone had been at my house, it meant she was watching more closely than I realized. But the real twist didn't land until I replayed her final sentence in my head, over and over, until the implication hit hard enough to make me sit down. You can't trust the people you think you know. Not Dad, not Mom, and maybe not even Anne. A chill crawled down my spine as a new possibility surfaced, darker than all the others. What if my mother didn't disappear from us? What if she disappeared because of something, someone inside our family? I didn't sleep that night. I lay on the couch fully dressed, every light off, watching the faint glow from the street lamps bleed through the blinds. My mother's voice, older, rougher, still somehow mine, kept replaying in my head. He was at your house today. Don't let him in. You can't trust the people you think you know. My father, my sister, my ex, my mother herself. Every person tied to the lie of her death belonged on a board with red string and pins. But instead of paralyzing me, the chaos sharpened into a cold, narrow point. I needed answers, not grief. I needed control, not panic. And I knew exactly where to start. By sunrise, I'd built a plan that terrified me with how easily it came together. Not because it was dangerous, but because it felt natural, like some part of me had been preparing for this truth my entire life. The first step was gathering proof, real proof, not the emotional fog that had been choking me. I pulled an old fireproof box from my closet, the one where I'd stored every scrap of paperwork after Dad died 3 years ago. Birth certificates, medical files, insurance statements, tax returns, my entire childhood in paper form. I never touched it except at tax time. But now it spread across my dining table like a crime scene. I combed through the documents for hours. What I found didn't answer anything, but it lit a fuse. There was no death certificate for my mother. There were insurance documents signed by my father 3 days after her fatal crash, but no official report. No coroner's statement, just a cluster of hospital bills from earlier that year, followed by nothing. It wasn't definitive, but it was enough. I took pictures of everything and backed them up to 2 separate thumb drives. One stayed with me. The other I hid inside the lining of the duffel bag I used for work. If even half of what my mother implied was true, someone had been watching me long before today. Step 2 was leverage. I needed the truth from someone inside the lie, and the only person whose guilt was already showing through the cracks was Anne. At noon, I texted her, "We need to talk. Tonight, my place. No excuses." She responded instantly, "Okay. I'll come after work." Her lack of hesitation didn't reassure me. If anything, it made her more suspicious. People who fear you digging don't rush to meet you unless they're planning to control the conversation. Step 3 was protection. Not physical, though the footage of Noah lingering outside my house kept replaying in my mind like a warning. No, I needed information safeguards. If someone wiped my phone or trashed my house again, the evidence had to live somewhere they couldn't reach. I emailed every document to a private account I'd never used and wrote a time-delayed message set to send to a coworker if I didn't log in within 48 hours. It was vague but enough to spark concern. By late afternoon, the numbness had dissolved, replaced by a cold steadiness I didn't know I was capable of. My mother's warning wasn't going to scare me, it clarified the battlefield. Someone followed me. Someone broke into my house. Someone lied about the single most defining tragedy of my life. And someone, maybe my ex, maybe my sister, maybe the very woman who whispered to me in Costco, believed they still had control over me. They were wrong. As the sun dropped behind the Seven Hills skyline, I sat at my dining table with the documents neatly stacked, waiting for Anne. My heartbeat was slow, deliberate, almost mechanical. Because when she walked through my door tonight, I wasn't looking for comfort or nostalgia or the sister I used to know. I was looking for cracks. I was looking for guilt. I was looking for the first truth that would unravel all the others. And I was ready, finally, to make someone answer for the life they stole from me. Anne arrived late. Not the kind of late that comes from traffic or losing track of time. The kind that comes from sitting in a car for too long, rehearsing a story. When I opened the door, she scanned behind me before stepping inside. Her eyes were bloodshot but not puffy. Not from crying, more like she hadn't blinked enough. I didn't hug her. She didn't expect me to. We sat at the dining table, the stack of documents between us like a silent witness. She stared at them without touching anything. "You talked to her," Anne said. No greeting, no small talk. Her voice was scraped raw. "Yes," I said. "She told me someone came to my house. She said I shouldn't let him in." I watched her closely. "Was it Noah?" A flicker, barely there, crossed her face. Not fear, recognition. "I don't know," she whispered. I didn't believe her, not fully. But before I could press, she took a shaky breath and said, "You're right. There's more to what happened when we were kids. Dad lied. But I didn't know the whole truth until a few years ago." "Then tell me." My voice was steady, colder than I meant. Anne picked up one paper, an old insurance form, and traced a crease in it like she was stalling. "Mom didn't die in a car crash. That part is true. But she didn't leave us either. Not at first. My skin prickled. What does that mean? She stared at the wall behind me, the way people look when they're pulling words from somewhere deep and buried. Dad made her go away, she said. The room seemed to shift sideways. Explain. He said she was unstable, that she was dangerous, that she'd hurt us if she stayed. Anne swallowed hard. I believed him. I was 15. I didn't understand enough to question it. And he said if we told anyone, even you, something terrible would happen. What terrible thing? I asked. Anne didn't answer. She didn't have to because her eyes said it wasn't a hypothetical threat. It was something she'd seen. Before I could push further, a faint vibration buzzed from her jacket pocket. Her whole body stiffened. She didn't reach for the phone. She didn't even look at it. Who's calling? I asked. Ignore it, she said quickly. But the phone buzzed again. Same persistent rhythm. Something inside me snapped. I reached across the table and grabbed it before she could stop me. The caller ID froze the breath in my lungs. Dad, my hand shook as I held the phone out to her. How is he calling you? Anne looked like someone who'd been punched. Don't answer it, she whispered. Please, don't. But the horror blooming across her face, the naked terror, was the kind you can't fake. And that terror didn't match the story she just told me. It didn't match anything. I answered. A man's voice filled the room instantly, smooth, calm, familiar in a way that shot ice through my spine. Anne, he said, unaware it was me on the line. She's not ready yet. Keep her where she is. Don't let her leave. My vision tunneled. I felt my pulse in my throat. My father was dead. I watched them lower his casket into the ground. I scattered dirt onto it myself. I forced my mouth to move. Who is this? The pause on the other end was microscopic, but I felt it crack the air. Then the voice shifted just slightly, not recognition, not guilt. Anne reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. Hang up, she begged. Please, you don't understand. He told me not to, but the man on the line spoke over her, speaking to me now. I told you not to look for her. My mother's warning, my father's voice, a dead man giving orders. It wasn't Dad, not truly. It couldn't be. But someone who knew everything, someone inside our lives, someone still pulling strings, someone who wasn't just watching us, someone controlling us. I dropped the phone as if it burned. Anne reached for it, shaking, whispering, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought I could keep you out of it. Keep me out of what? Before I could ask, headlights swept across my front window, slow, deliberate, stopping directly in front of my house. Anne's face drained of color. They found us, she whispered. Anne was already moving toward the back door when the car engine outside cut off. Not abruptly, quietly. Intentionally, like whoever was in that car wanted us to hear the silence that followed. I stood frozen, pulse hammering in my ears. Anne grabbed my arm. We have to go now. No, I said, pulling free. Not until you tell me what this is, what he wants. Who was on that phone? She shook her head, backing toward the hallway as if distance might soften the truth. You're not going to believe me. Try me. Her eyes filled, not with tears but with resignation. The kind people get right before confessing the sin they've been groomed to carry. Dad didn't lie about Mom being dangerous, Anne said. He wasn't protecting us, he was protecting his work. I frowned. His work, Dad was a claims adjuster. What the hell are you talking about? The sound outside changed, car door open. Footsteps, gravel crunching under measured weight. Anne took a breath that seemed to hollow her out. He wasn't a claims adjuster, that was the cover. Dad worked for a private contractor. Not government, not exactly. They handled people. People who couldn't disappear on their own. I stared at her. Disappear like witness protection? More like containment, she whispered. The footsteps grew closer. I shook my head. Why would Mom need to be contained? She was. A liability, Anne cut in. Not because she was unstable, because she saw something she was never supposed to see. My stomach twisted hard. What did she see? The knock at the door rattled the frame. Firm, not loud, a message more than a request. Anne closed her eyes, whispering, she saw Dad, the real Dad. The air left my lungs. Anne continued, voice cracking at the edges. When you were 12, Mom found out what his job actually involved. What he did to people who didn't cooperate. She confronted him. He gave her a choice, cooperate or disappear. I pressed a hand to my chest, trying to breathe. Disappear as in pretend to die. Anne nodded. She agreed, but not before he threatened us. He said if she told anyone, even us, he'd make sure we understood why people like him were never disobeyed. My knees felt unsteady. And you never told me. You were a kid, she said. Dad said you weren't strong enough to handle it, and that if I slipped even once, he'd know. The knock came again. Louder, my voice dropped. Dad is dead. Whoever's outside isn't him. Anne shook her head, terrified. Dad wasn't the point, he was just the handler. There were others, there still are others, and they want Mom back under control. You walking into her at Costco jeopardized everything. A cold wave washed through me as the truth sharpened. Mom didn't leave us. She was removed, not for our safety, for control. And now I had stepped into the exact role she was punished for, the witness who saw too much. The knock stopped. Silence thickened. Then a man's voice drifted through the door, calm, patient, chillingly familiar despite not belonging to my father. Anne, open the door, she needs to come with us. Anne's face crumpled. Oh God, she whispered. I thought we had more time. I moved toward her. Who is that? Her eyes met mine, full of the dread she'd been carrying for years. He's the one who made Mom disappear, Anne said. And he's the one Dad answered too. The doorknob turned slowly, deliberately from the other side. Anne backed away, trembling. He doesn't want to kill you. He wants to use you. For what? I demanded. Her answer landed like a knife. Leverage. Mom never stopped running, and you're the one thing she can't leave behind. The doorknob clicked once before I reacted. Something inside me, fear, instinct, rage, maybe all three fused together, snapped into movement. I grabbed Anne's wrist and yanked her toward the hallway just as the door pushed inward a few inches. A man's voice drifted through the gap. Anne, don't make this harder. I didn't look back. I dragged her into my office and locked the door, the same office where the chair had been moved, where someone had already been inside, studying the layout. Tell me there's a way out, I whispered. Anne pointed to the small window facing the side yard. But it's a drop. I didn't care. I shoved it open and the cold night air rushed in. I motioned for her to go first, but she shook her head. You go, she said. He isn't here for me. Her refusal cut deeper than it should have. I'm not leaving you. He won't hurt me, she insisted. He never has. I stared at her, and in that moment I understood something dark and devastating. Anne had been living under these people's influence for years. Not voluntarily, conditioned, trained to obey through fear, silence, and guilt. The same guilt she felt now for letting me get this far. But I wasn't 15. I wasn't manageable. And I wasn't going to be used to trap my mother. Before I could say anything else, the office door shuddered, wood cracking. He was forcing his way in. I grabbed Anne's shoulders. You're coming with me. I didn't wait for her to agree. I hoisted myself through the window first, landing hard on the gravel below, my ankle screaming as it twisted. Anne climbed out after me just as the office door exploded inward, splinters flying. We ran. Down the side yard, through the gate, across the street. My lungs burned. My ankle throbbed. But fear pushed us farther than adrenaline ever could. I didn't know where we were going until headlights swept across us, bright, sudden, blinding. A car pulled up so fast I thought it would hit us. The passenger door flung open. Get in, a woman's voice ordered. My heart jerked. Mom, Anne froze, but I shoved her forward. Move. We dived inside, and Mom hit the gas before the doors even shut. Tires screamed. The house shrank behind us until it vanished around the curve of the street. Only then did she speak. I told you not to look for me, she said, eyes locked on the road. And I told Anne to keep you away from all of this. My voice shook. You lied to me my entire life. I kept you alive, she said. Believe whatever you need to about the rest. Anne let out a choked breath. He's not going to stop, you know that. Mom didn't answer for a long moment. Then, he won't have the chance. The tone, cold, decisive, was one I didn't recognize. But it wasn't cruel. It was resolved. She drove us to an abandoned industrial park on the edge of Sloan. The kind of place no one visits after dark. When she finally stopped the car, she turned to us. I've been running for 20 years, she said. But I kept evidence. Everything your father's handler did. Names, locations, proof. My pulse hammered. Why didn't you go to the police? She looked at me with tired eyes. Because the people involved are the people the police think they answer to. She reached into the glove box and pulled out a small hard drive, weathered, scratched, wrapped in duct tape. This is what they've been hunting me for, she said. And what they'll hunt you for if I don't end it. End it how? I asked. Mom met my stare squarely. By destroying them, all of them, and it starts with exposing the handler. A sound behind us, tires on gravel. Mom didn't flinch. He followed us. I felt Anne tense beside me, but Mom's voice cut through the dark. You two stay here. No, I said. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time since I was 12, I saw the mother I remembered. Not fragile, not fleeing, fierce. I'm done running, she said. Tonight, he learns that I don't fear him anymore. She stepped out of the car. The confrontation lasted minutes. I didn't see everything, just shadows, raised voices, a single gunshot that echoed across the concrete. When the silence settled, Mom walked back alone. Calm, steady, alive. It's done, she said, closing the car door softly. And now we take the evidence public. I stared at her, this woman who was dead, then alive, then a stranger, and now something entirely new, something forged by 20 years of surviving. What now? I whispered. She reached for my hand. Now we dismantle the people who tried to dismantle us. And for the first time in my life, I believed we could.